Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. We're in church, and in our tradition, we talk back to it. So if I say good evening, then you say good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Now, raise your hand if before this meeting, before you heard about this meeting, you never heard about unarmed crisis response. Anybody here? Okay. On Zoom, no. Okay, raise your hand if before this meeting you had never heard of the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition. Okay, we've got a couple of hands, so some people don't know or haven't heard about the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition. But everyone here has heard about unarmed crisis response. Well, you are welcome. You are welcome here to this community briefing. Whether you know a little bit, whether you know a lot, whether you have warm and fuzzy feelings about the prospect of an unarmed crisis response team in Lynn, or whether you have questions about it and concerns, you are welcome today. What we're going to do is we are going to cast vision. We're going to tell you about the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition's vision for bringing an unarmed crisis response team to Lynn. You're going to hear stories from people that illustrate just why we need to have an unarmed crisis response team in Lynn. You're going to hear from Maria Ruiz Angel, who is the director of the Community Safety Department in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Somebody who has created an unarmed crisis response team and someone who can talk about how much it works. So you are in for a treat, and there will also be a time for you to ask your questions, and that we will have a bit of a dialogue as well. So you are very welcome to come to this community briefing because we are all one community. And whether we live here, work here, worship here, we are one community. And unarmed crisis response is ultimately about sharing and providing an alternative way to care for our community. So you are welcome. If I can get the spotlight here, Brother Stacey, if you can put the, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the folks who are speaking, they're going to come right up here to this pulpit so that folks on Zoom can see. And we are, and this is wonderful technology. You know, this is great because we are able to be one community, whether we are here in 72 Silsby Street, whether we are in our dining room table, our living room, wherever we are still gathered today in this sacred space. And so I am grateful for that. So the first person we will have is Adriana Paz, the co-chair of the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition. You know, and so she's going to come up here and invite her.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us tonight. As Reverend Bernadette said, my name is Adriana Paz, co-chair of the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition and president of Prevent the Cycle. We came together after the murder of George Floyd, recognizing that in Lynn, we needed to have a serious look at how we see and define public safety and community care and who should provide it. I'm up here as one of 7 diverse sets of organizations who are all invested in our city, which we call our home, where we work and raise our children. Now, while we've worked together for the last few years, I want to acknowledge and recognize that some form of this work has been going on for years prior to 2020. Groups like ECHO have long seen the problems in our city and decided to work on this long before we became a coalition. 2020 was the match that we needed to understand that there was power in unity, and as a result, we have the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition. It's often said we have 2 different Lyns. The phrase is used when discussing housing, job opportunities, but the same is true when discussing public safety and how we care for each other. I say this because there are many who will say that everything is fine with the current system in place. They will say, I feel safe. I think the police are doing a great job. I've never had any problems. To you, I say that is great news. And we would like that to be consistent for everyone. However, there are two things that can be true at the same time. While your experience may be positive, for others, their experience and interaction with police have not been the same. Our Black, Latino, undocumented, differently able brothers and sisters, those who suffer from addiction and mental illness, they have been disproportionately impacted by current policing and justice systems. For many, where they live determines how much they are policed. For others, it's their skin color. For others, their mental state plays a large role in the outcomes of those police interactions. We need a program that will decrease the probability of incarceration, decrease the likelihood of use of force, which leads to trauma and death, and increase the probability of receiving the right care and right resources. Alert is that program.
That's right. Yeah, it is.
Alert will provide all of Lynn, but especially those most impacted by current systems, the opportunity to receive help and care in their most distressing moments, from a team that will be well-trained in best practices already tried and tested across the country. Professionals in diverse fields like medical, crisis response, and mediation. This team will respond to nonviolent calls equipped with their training instead of weapons. At this moment, when someone is homeless, who is homeless is sleeping in front of a business, the only option is to call the police, who can either take you to the emergency room or to the jail. When someone is in the middle of a mental health crisis, what options are there but to call the police? The statistics out there offer a plain view. Our Black and Latino brothers and sisters make up 7% and 11% of the population in Massachusetts, yet are 18% and 27% of the jail population. 42% of the inmate and detainees in Massachusetts have diagnosed mental illness. 54% of homeless individuals report having been jailed in relation to their homelessness. We need to decriminalize homelessness, poverty. We need to decriminalize mental illness and create a people-centered program that aims to meet our neighbors where they're at and provide care and assistance based on their needs. That is Alert.
Thank you. Now we will have residents from Lynn share their stories about the need for Alert. We invite Ella Thomas to come now.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Ella Thomas. A few years ago, I had a problem with the police department. I have a son that suffers from mental illness. We went to the appointment that day, and his medication was changed. He asked the doctor, why was his medication changed again? And he left. Came home and went to bed. About half an hour afterwards, the police showed up. They came in, they went upstairs, and they brought him down in his underwear and a t-shirt, bare feet. They pulled out the pink slip that they brought with them and said that's why they're there, to get him. They start pulling on him and everything because he wanted to know why they were there. He didn't do anything. He was sleeping. They handcuffed him. And when I said to them, why? He hasn't done anything. He asked one question. Why was my medication changed? The doctor issued the pink slip. They told me that if I didn't back up, I would be arrested. So there it goes. Everything escalated because he's getting upset that I'm being threatened of being arrested, and he's being handcuffed and being pulled out. It was the winter time, and we had snow on the ground. We had a high snow bank, and the sidewalk was filled with snow. They pulled him out of his house, half naked, across the snow bank, not waiting for the ambulance to show up, because an ambulance showed up with them for the patient. They didn't wait, but while they were getting ready to put him in the car, the ambulance came. The EMTs came out and told him to remove the cuffs and try to calm him down. But before they took him out, one of the officers, there was one male, one female, and she started patting him down. And he said, take your hands off me. The other officer, the male officer, put his hand on his gun as if he was ready to pull it. Now, he ended up at Salem Hospital, and within the space of an hour and a half, I was called to go and retrieve him because there was nothing wrong with him. Now, if we had something else in place other than the police officers coming, none of that would have happened. None of it would have happened. And they should have waited for the ambulance to get there with the EMTs that were more prepared to take care of him. And they didn't. So I have a very nasty taste in my mouth when it comes down to the police department taking care of people that suffer from mental illness through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you all.
Right.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
Up to you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Rosemary Smith. I worked the last 9 months at New Community Television as a social working therapist. I was invited today to be here because I wrote a letter request like New Community Alternative Police, and the letter was published in a newsletter. And this letter is supposed to be published in a newspaper, but before the newspaper contacted me, the police department, the Lynn Police Department contacted me because I wrote this letter. Last year, my boyfriend had a COVID, and I could not contact him the whole day. And I was very, very worried, but I was worried to call 911 because my boyfriend is a very tall guy, he's black, and he doesn't speak English. And I thought it would be a recipe for disaster, so I called 911. And I live in Salem, and he lives, of course, here in Lynn. And I decided to call because I could not contact him the whole day. And I called, I told them, I say, you don't need to send the police. He's has COVID. He's very sick, he lives alone. And I cannot go check on him because I'm sick too. And
what happened. I was so worried, nobody called me back to say what happened, and, okay. And later, someone called me, I thought it was the police officer going to check on him, but was not. I learned later after I watched the body camera. I tried asking them how he's doing. He said, oh, he's fine. Don't let me ask anything. I said, okay. These 2 days later, my boyfriend called me like 3:30 in the morning, and he said, I'm dying, I need help. And I called again. This time the police didn't went to the ambulance. Because the first phone call I gave for 911, just the police went to check on him. And they didn't provide any help. They just like asking him, see, he needs help. But he was very sick. He has a high fever. He was like not in his mind. And he could not say, and he said, no, I don't need help. And after when I had the chance to talk to him, he told me, the police talk to me all the time. They have their hands in the gun. I was so scared. And he said, I'm so scared. And after when I talked to him, I said, this is not right. We need to do something. And I talked to John. John was my supervisor at the meeting. He said, what do you feel about write a letter? I said, okay, I can do it. And I wrote a letter. I wrote in the letter, the police didn't provide help. And they did it. They didn't provide any help. Just asked, you okay? And he said, yeah, and they left. And the newspaper, we sent a letter to the newspaper, contact the police contact me. They want to have a meeting with me. And I met with them, and they make me tell all my story, what helped, everything. But my letter was about how I felt and how my boyfriend felt about the whole thing, the whole situation. And he looked at me and told me, this letter is a lie. You lied the whole thing. This didn't happen. And I was very, I said, oh my gosh, I told him, this is not a lie. This is what happened. I was not there, but I wrote what my boyfriend told me. They left, we watched the body camera. We have they offer help, but they didn't provide help. And I never wrote in a letter they didn't offer help. They didn't provide help. And make this story short. And after that, they called Jeff Cosby. They had a meeting with him. They're not happy with the whole situation. And they don't accept, they did help. And I told Jeff, okay, we can write another letter. I wrote another letter, but I just highlight everything I say. I just correct something about the offer. And my story is pretty much that. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you. We will now hear from service providers in Lynn. Okay, we'll start with Emily Fish from Rana.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see everyone, and thank you so much for having me. Hopefully that won't happen.
I apologize for interrupting you, but we do have interpretation working now, and I know that we have some people who are here who are in need of interpretation. So if we could just pause for a moment, Adriana, if you could give the interpretation instructions.
Para los que necesitan interpretación, el número para llamar es 301-715-8592. Después de marcar el número, les van a pedir un código, la cual es 859-091-5431. O sea, el segundo número que está ahí apuntado. Y luego les va a pedir un código que es CES. Si necesitan ayuda, por favor, buscarme acá adelante o buscar ayuda de los compañeros que están al lado. That's
Hello again. My name is Emily Fish, and I work at a nonprofit here in Lynn called ROCA. Has anyone heard of ROCA before? Oh, that was a surprise. So I'm here joined by Henry and James, who work with me at ROCA. And we're a nonprofit. We've been in Lynn for 9 years now, serving young men who are involved currently or previously in the criminal justice system. In the last year, we just started serving young women in Lynn as well who are involved in the criminal justice system. And basically, we're reaching some of the highest risk young people in the community. So they're court involved, they might be gang involved, they might have behavioral health issues, they may have substance abuse issues. It's really anybody captured by our criminal justice system. And that's a very wide net these days. Reverend Bernadette and ECHO and the coalition asked me to come to share some stories because we are an outreach-based organization. We say young people, we are working with young people who are not ready, willing, or able to show up for themselves. So we go out into the community and we reach out to them. So we give ourselves 6 to 9 months to even build a relationship with them. They can tell us no for 9 months and we'll still go to their door over and over again. I like to joke with the guys that we legally stalk them. And so we're very mobile, we're all around the community, and we build pretty strong relationships, not only with our young people, but the ones who love them as well. So parents, siblings, partners, and so forth. So we are often called in crisis situations. When a parent or a partner or neighbor doesn't know who to call, often they're calling me or Henry or one of our other youth workers to try to get some help. So I thought of 2 recent stories that I could share tonight. Obviously not going to share any names, but a few weeks ago we had a young man who he was robbed at gunpoint for his scooter. He has a history of behavioral health issues, PTSD in particular, and he does have a criminal record. So a few days after the incident, his mother called one of our youth workers in a panic. She said that he was screaming at the top of the lungs in the apartment, breaking everything in the living room and the kitchen, and she didn't know what to do and she didn't know who to call. So we sent 2 youth workers over to the house to talk to him, and it took like about an hour, but they were able to calm him down. They were able to talk to him about going to the hospital, and by the end of the day, he had voluntarily checked into an inpatient behavioral health program. Another example, and this is actually, Henry was around for this. We had another young person who, he came home very drunk and most likely high. He had a serious opioid substance use issue, and he had stolen the car keys to his mother's car from her, and he was trying to get in the car and drive, and she was obviously trying to get him back into the home, but wasn't physically able to do that. He'd already been arrested in the past for an OUI twice, and he had a criminal record as well. And so Henry showed up at the house, and he was able to get this young man back into the home. They fed him, they gave him water, they convinced him to go to bed. And the next morning we showed up and offered him lots of different services for his substance use issue. Of course, it didn't fix everything, but over the next course of the year, we were able to get him into detox and inpatient treatment eventually. The reason I think I was asked to give these examples is to show that there is a way to respond to someone in crisis without causing what we call collateral consequences, right? So collateral consequences would be what everyone fears, that someone's going to get arrested and go back to jail, that somebody's criminal record is going to ignite a violation of probation, that their immigration status will somehow be affected, that that if there's more people in the house than there should be, that all of a sudden Section 8 is gone, that if there's anything happening in the house that might be considered violent, that all of a sudden DCF showing up the next day. So these are the collateral consequences I think parents and partners and neighbors and friends are trying to avoid when they call an organization like ROCA and ask them to come help. This doesn't mean we take unnecessary risks and put ourselves in unnecessary danger, but it does mean that we build relationships, deep relationships with members of our community and are able to leverage those to de-escalate situations and keep people out of harm. So although ROCA won't be part of ALERT, we won't be the unarmed response, there are a lot of organizations in Lynn that are outreach-based, that are in the community, that are ready, willing, and able to make introductions and help with trust building, and that are ready, willing, and able to take referrals, so that we can avoid collateral consequences and instead help people connect to support and resources. I think that there's a lot of reasons people wouldn't call the police, and we need to have an alternative so that people can still feel like they have a safe way to get the people they love help that they need. I do want to say a special thank you to ECHO and the Racial Justice Coalition and Reverend Bernadette for having me. And I'm very grateful to be able to share these stories, and I'm very grateful to all my co-workers and staff who make this work possible. So thank you.
Good evening. See, am I close enough? Good evening. There we go. My name is Stephanie Rana, and I am the Greater Lynn Area Director of Justice Resource Institute's Lynn office. So we are a mental health provider in Lynn currently. I have been a mental health worker for 8 years. So when Emily was referencing community partners and agencies that are ready to commit to, supporting ALERT, we're one of them. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to just take a step back to frame the conversation and bring in a larger perspective. So the first point that I do want to make is that an unarmed crisis response team fills in the gaps in the community between what options there currently are in crisis response and between calling the police. So right now, some of the current options, the current option is to call and schedule for mobile crisis to request an evaluation to deem if a person is safe or unsafe, which could potentially lead to a hospitalization. This is an important service, but if you've ever been in a crisis, you understand that scheduling support for later is often not enough. The second option is to call 911, and there, this may involve sending the police. And the unarmed crisis response team, so ALERT, would fill a huge gap by providing immediate access to care, number one, assessments, and collaboratively safety planning with workers specifically trained for these types of interactions and responses. The second point that I want to make is that an unarmed crisis response team, so ALERT, offers an opportunity to intervene in a way to keep the situation from escalating. So families, as we've heard plenty of stories, may not feel comfortable calling the police for a variety of reasons. Their own past negative experience, their own immigration status, fears of the police. And these reasons could escalate a situation if the police shows up. So unarmed crisis response offers a different option, and it offers a person to have a sense of agency in how they would like to manage a crisis. So when our clinicians at JRI are safety planning with our clients, which is something that we regularly do, they indicate that they do not think calling someone with a gun and a badge is a supportive option that they want to consider in a crisis. I just want to let that one sink in. So I also want to bring bring into this space that there are current ways that providers right now are in the community and are practicing unarmed crisis response work through evidence-based practices. I'm going to reference 3 that my staff are trained in. Psychological first aid is an evidence-informed approach to helping children, adolescents, adults, and families in the immediate aftermath of a traumatic event. De-escalation techniques are used to resolve the crisis without the use of force. So skills such as being aware of your own body language, the way that you talk to someone, the pace of your speech, so, taking it down, slowing it down, the proximity that you have to a person, so not being in someone's space. There are people who are aware of that and the impact that that can have on how someone responds to you. And then also, one thing that we're constantly doing is collaboratively safety planning with our families and with the clients that we work with in a way that feels respectful. And so the point that I just want to end with is that there is a commitment of mental health agencies, recovery organizations, and other nonprofits that are ready to coordinate together in Lynn with Alert to provide post-crisis care and support. And at JRI, I just want to mention, because I see Daylene here, that we do have a coordination meeting with provider organizations that already exists. It's called the Lynn System of Care. And this is a monthly meeting where the providers in Lynn come together to talk about what is happening in our surrounding community. So this just demonstrates that there is already an existing network that is here in Lynn, and that we've already established that there is a need and a capacity to start Alert. Thank you.
Everyone, before we continue, there's a car blocking the driveway, license plate 2BBH24. Someone wishes to leave and cannot leave because you are blocking them. So, all right, great. So you have heard from a couple of service providers here in Lynn. You have heard from residents who have had experiences that call for the need for an unarmed crisis response team. Now, at the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition, we're 7 organizations. There were a number of us who attended an alternative to police conference. And this was a conference that was held virtually, and there were people from all over the country who are doing this work, who came onto this conference to give their experiences, to share how unarmed crisis response alternatives to police were working in this area. And Mariela Ruiz Angel, who is the Director of Community Safety in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was one of these people. And her presentation was so compelling, and she told the story for how she got there. They just started the program 18 months ago, and she'll tell more about that. But I am just so pleased that she, when I sent an email to her, she said, of course, any way I can help, I want to help, because what's possible in Albuquerque is possible in Lynn. And so Mariela Ruiz Angel is a proud Chicana, born and raised in the border city of El Paso, Texas. She understands the needs of diverse communities and works to empower, educate, and advocate for all Buqueños. Prior to her appointment as director of ACS, Ruiz Angel developed and ran Albuquerque's Office of Immigrant and Refugees Affairs. In her new role, leading the 3rd branch of public safety, Ruiz Angel is working to ensure that the department follows through with its mission of advocating and promoting a holistic, empathic, and informed public safety response to behavioral and mental related calls for crisis. She brings to the city of Albuquerque an extensive background in the fields of education, business development, and corporate customer relations. Ruiz Angel holds a Master of Business Administration and Human Resources and a Master of Social Work and Leadership and Administration, both obtained from the New Mexico Highlands University. Let's welcome to the Zoom screen, the Zoom room, Mariela Ruiz Angel.
this level of people joining. So very excited to see this, and it feels very welcoming and feels like something I would totally put on here in Albuquerque. So thank you for welcoming me. And again, I hope everyone's having a good night. So I'm going to share my screen just because I want to stay on time and I want to make sure there's lots of opportunity for questions. But I want to go ahead and jump on in. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay, good. So, we are the Albuquerque Community Safety Department. I could not tell you how many iterations of different names and different ideas we have for what we wanted to call this. There might even be a day we might change this, but what we wanted to really identify as is that we were community-centered and that we are a little bit of we are the safety component, right? It's not just the social work or the counseling, but it's really getting people to a safe place. So that's how we came up with that. Albuquerque, the ACS, and I'll refer to it as ACS, is a third branch of public safety for the city of Albuquerque. We are right in line at the same parity of police and fire. That was very purposeful for us. We wanted to make sure that ACS was always at the round table with police and fire. We wanted to make sure that we were taken seriously, right? We wanted to make sure that I wasn't a side, that ACS wasn't a side gig, that it was up at the front and helping to make decisions on how we move as a city in regards to public safety. And it's been fantastic. It's actually been probably the best decision we could have made. So ACS sends trained professionals, and these are folks that have backgrounds in social work, counseling, some of them are community health workers, formadoras. We have a ton of peer support workers. We have teachers that have just ready, that's what they did their profession. We have nurses. We have a variety of people who are doing this work for us. And what we really go out to is non-medical and non-violent 911 calls for service. Additionally, so it's not just the mental health, but we're also addressing unsheltered communities and addiction, as well as even non-behavioral health issues, such as abandoned vehicles and dealer pickups. Again, I wanted to make sure this is something we use when we talk about ACS from a city perspective, from a state perspective. When we talk about funding, we see it as a parity. We want to be seen as equals and seen as serious folks at the table. So it's been really great for us to be on this chart. So how do we get here? Similarly, when we all watched the murder of George Floyd, I think our community came out in numbers, not just locally, but nationwide, right? And I think that was enough for us to really re-examine our current situation, which we had a bunch of little, really small kind of pilots and small programs that were already existing within our city infrastructure. And even partners that we worked with, and some of them great, some of them not very robust, some of them kind of hanging on by the last thread, or not being funded. And so we knew that this type of work could happen. We knew that the model of having non-law enforcement or full response models worked, but they needed to be bigger, they needed to be bolder, they needed to be pushed and rechanged and actually have a community-centered approach. And not led by police or not led by fire. So in 2020, we announced that we would be developing this new department. We spent 6 months plus, right? Community engagement never ends, but we did have a very robust 6-month community engagement process where we met with everybody and their dogs. It was city council, we met with all the community that we could possibly meet. We met with people with lived experiences. We went to camps. We went to places where people were in recovery. We talked to folks to ask, what would this look like if you had been approached by a behavioral health responder instead of somebody with a gun and a badge? And so we've done a ton of work in just understanding what does the community want to see from this type of response. And so we spent pretty much January through most of the year in 2021 developing, writing up job descriptions, designing what we would be wearing, figuring out the right colors. I mean, it was a whole process. How we were going to collect data, making sure that we had pipelines for people to get right providers and connections to places that we were going to be able to take people. So in September of 2021, we implemented, we only had 5 responders. We asked for $7.8 million in our first year and received the entire amount. Most of that was on staff. We had and we hired 50 positions. There was always a fear that could you actually hire for this? Will people even want to work and do this work? Absolutely they do. They absolutely want to do this work. People, especially as myself as a social worker, I mean, I love our providers and I love our case managers and we absolutely need them and God bless them because man, that job is hard. But I think for a lot of folks who have been working in this field are really exhausted of the challenges and the barriers that it takes to get people into services, right? There's this before you can even talk to a client, you have to make sure they have Medicaid or Medicare or some sort of health care. And then do they meet the right acuity? Do they have dual diagnosis? Is there a code issue happening? All of those things become barriers to working with people. And when you become a first responder in this type of work, right, when you're really out there addressing and assessing and evaluating somebody firsthand, it allows you to help hopefully break down their barriers because then you can really evaluate okay, this person is in this situation and we need to get them to this situation, not just a catch-all. So this has really been, we've been a lot of behavioral health backgrounds who have been fantastic about wanting to come work here. So we're really excited about that. Who is ACS? Our vision statement that was written with and from our community is a safe and inclusive city in which any person can call for help and get a purposeful, humane, and appropriate response. Additionally, our values guide our decisions. We wanted to create our values really about, and these aren't our values, but this is a training. We use a training model that we call as We Care. And it's about well-being and safety. It's about empathy. It's about community at the center, accountability, respect and dignity, and equity. This is something we hold ourselves accountable to. It's something that allows us to continue to guide our vision and our mission. And so this is what we really use at the forefront of the work that we do. So, get into some of the details. We have multiple different types of divisions. We are a department, so it only was appropriate to make sure that we actually were able to have the right type of responder to go to the right type of call. So we do have a mobile crisis team. It's a very small team. This was already something that was had been established. It is a co-responder, so this is one of the many non-law enforcement, but this is one that does have a co-responder, and it's with an advanced crisis intervention trained officer, and they go out to the highest acuity types of calls. So it's clinician-led. Police are there for only sort of safety protocols, but these are very small amount of calls. These are really high escalated types of calls in which we would protect. Somebody might have a gun at that point. Our next level, and this is where we start to get into all of our non-law enforcement divisions, is our behavioral health responder. Our behavioral health responder go to mid to low acuity types of calls. These are your welfare checks. These are your unsheltered individual, your disturbance calls, your suspicious individual calls. This is your call to say, I haven't heard from my mom in a while and I'm really concerned. Can you go check on her? I would prefer to have a behavioral health responder go to my mom's house than to have a police officer go and scare her. So those are the kind of calls that we tend to go out to, as well as all the different other types of behavioral health calls, such as suicide ideation, child and senior types of issues. then we have our community responder. Now, this was very specific because it doesn't necessarily require a mental behavioral health degree or education or experience, but it's really about being community-centered. What we have seen is police tend to over-police in certain areas of town. And so as people are getting their license plates ran, or you're passing by a park, or whatever the situation might be, you tend to have officers who might run plates or might see somebody as a suspicious individual and stop. What we know to be true is that, one, that takes them out of the field. They really should be doing police work. And two, if they're really looking for things like wellness checks, right? Somebody who might be inebriated and might need assistance, it doesn't require that, right? It requires somebody who can just really address the medical concern and call paramedics if they need that. And that's where I think we're seeing that we wanted to get away from officers going to abandoned vehicles, because most people who have abandoned vehicles are actually living out of their car. So why send a police officer? We don't need to, right? We don't need to do that. Now, we work closely with police when it comes to trying to make sure that we're walking into a safe situation. Sometimes there are people that abandon vehicles where there's illegal activity that might be happening. Sure, that's a different type of call, but when people are living in their homes, we should be sending the appropriate type of response. Our 4th division is a street outreach responder. As we know, our unsheltered community numbers are rising. The pandemic hit lots of communities very hard. People are starting to live in their cars. That's now turning into living on the streets. And some numbers are going up. So we wanted to have a very dedicated team that would be able to go and work in partnership with other types of street outreach providers that do that work to really address those very specific issues. And so that one's like a daily. We go to big encampments of 175 or more. We work very closely with trying to get housing for these folks. We do assessments for housing. We do vouchers and work with community to try to get motel vouchers, or even get families that we see into some of our wellness hotels that we have available for families. So our last couple, I didn't put the last one in there because that's a new one, but we have a community-oriented response assistance. This is what we call CORA. CORA was an idea to put a clinician with an officer back before the pandemic to go out to work with families and communities who've been impacted by homicides or very tragic events that may have happened in their communities. We re-brought it back to life when we brought ACS, except we took the officer out. We didn't necessarily think that we needed it, and it's really been amazing. This is what I might, for somebody who's maybe much more police-oriented, it's really like a detective role. Somebody who have a higher acuity for understanding trauma and grief. We work heavily with domestic violence survivors and families. We worked, I'll give you an example. We had 2 unfortunate events at massage parlors owned by Asian community members, both in the same month. And although police were going to do their investigation and do what they needed to do, the community and the Asian business community specifically did not want to work with police. We had already built so much untrust with them from raids that had been happening with ICS before. And so they refused. They said, we don't want police in our area. However, they were very open to having ACS, and it's just because of the work and the culture that we all come from in understanding all of that history and trauma that they have been, that they have gone through with police. So we were invited to go to vigils. We were invited to understand what was happening in some of these businesses. And so it was a really an amazing opening to now be able to work with some of these individuals on other pieces of trauma that they've been dealing with their entire life. So we're very, again, opening doors to other types of ways to work with community. Our last response that we're actually moving over is we have a violence intervention program. And typically this is a program that's come out of Oakland. This works with victims of gun shootings, specifically gang members, where we've seen that retaliation has to happen between a 24 to 72 hour period. This team made of peers goes out to reach out to the victim and will work with them around saying, look, we know that there's probably a high chance you're getting prepared for retaliation. Let's work through this instead. Because that is the piece that we think we need to really be helping when we talk about gang violence, when we talk about shootings, when we talk about recidivism in the jails coming in and out. So anyways, that's a newer program that we've had for a while, but we're going to be moving it under ACS. It didn't work under police. And again, I appreciate the want that it wanted to, right? The idea was that we put it in police, we'll work together, we'll make it happen, and it didn't quite work like that. And community didn't trust people, not because they ever had done anything, but because they were associated with police at the time. So with all that said, we'll be moving back into ACS. So we're growing, and I think there's a lot of faith now after we've been doing what we're doing. So again, I want to show a little bit, this is a graphic we like to use because really shows that we were able to hire, we actually hired that last little blue person that was a vacant position just the day after we lost somebody. So, so the reality is there's a want for these positions. There's a huge need for these types of positions. We are asking for double our fleet next year, and it's looking pretty good right now. But let's get into some numbers really quickly. So we report on a monthly basis. To date, I think we've taken over 7,500 calls in September. This is 7,500 calls that police didn't have to go to, 7,500 calls that could have been something worse than just taking them to the hospital, taking them to a provider, or just really just de-escalating the situation. 7,500 calls that we also saved the city from potential lawsuits and use of force situations. So this has been, I know it doesn't feel like a huge number, it's only about 2% of police calls. The fire department only takes about 12% of police calls, so at 2% we're feeling pretty good that we can grow and we can make a bigger dent in the system. As you can see here, we saw a huge increase in March, and I'll tell you why. Although we had to really finesse our way in, we asked if we could put two different behavioral health responders at the dispatch center to help with triaging calls. When we did that, our numbers tripled. So just as ideas, when you think about the current infrastructure that you're trying to work through, it's really important to make sure that we integrate in areas where there's gatekeepers that need assistance. That's all it was. It was assistance and being able and confirmation, right? Saying, hey, that's absolutely a call that we can take. You know, you don't have to worry, we'll back out if it's too aggressive or it's too intense. We have the skills to be able to do that. So again, our numbers went up. And I'll also send this so you guys can have it. And I'll put links I'll actually put links in the chat, and so you guys can have that. Again, our big thing is resources offer. We offer a lot of resources. We do transport those who voluntarily want to go to a location, and that's normally a hospital, a provider, a shelter. Occasionally we'll pick up the kid who needs to just be taken home because he's had too much to drink. So we'll do that. We do get declined services, but again, these are calls that we get to that they say, I don't want to work with you, and we're not going to force them, right? Now we're going to meet people where they're at. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop working with them. It means that we'll come back tomorrow and check on you again, see when you're ready for those services. We also get a no person ghost calls is what we call them, but they're no person found. That's okay. Those types of calls, police would have had to go to those calls and potentially met somebody else. It potentially could have turned into a different type of call. Now, and I want to kind of hone in, it's not to say that we don't work with police. We do. We work with police and we work with our fire department very closely. There is a time and when there is need for paramedics, there's a time when we need police. what we gauge on when those times are needed. And really, this number that we see of 46, which is the year to date, is actually police calling us out. So police call us out quite often to say, hey, I'm in this situation and I don't have the right resources. I don't even know what to do right now. And we will go in and the police can tap out and head on to their next call. So we're seeing those numbers increase, which is fantastic. We always know, and this is data that we collect. This is our city. You can see where we've been. This also allows us to be able to layer in regards to other types of services down the road. We'll be able to pinpoint where we're sending people. This will also show if we need to, where we should be placing folks in the city more purposely. Now the best part, and I think, and then I'm going to try to skip a little bit to the next pieces, but the last thing I want to hone in on is call response time. On average, our calls to low acuity crisis from a police perspective take anywhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours. For us, it takes about 30 minutes. And this is a huge, huge break for a lot of our city residents who are frustrated with the public safety system, who become more agitated, and all of a sudden the low acuity call turns into a high acuity call. So this has been a fantastic way for us to really impact call times, call volumes, and really what really shows us is that although we're very concentrated on quality, because that's what we care about the most, this does allow us to understand how long is on average are we taking to de-escalate and get somebody to safety. And it's not to say that we don't have calls that go on for 7 or 8 hours, we do. But on average, this is what we're looking at. We have been setting a precedent, which has been fantastic. So again, we've been interviewed across the nation. We've just talked to, I just talked to the mayor of Berkeley this afternoon. They're very interested in something, right? We have a lot of other folks, and I'm happy to, make any connections with any other of our individuals. We've been on lots of amazing coalitions nationwide, citywide, statewide, so that we can really talk about doing this as a nation, right? When all of us are working together, we can change policies at the federal level. We can change funding processes. We can talk about incorporating behavioral health into the public safety system, where we see that there's the funding that we have for JAG funds and different types of funding streams. That's going to be important as we think about where future funding will come for this. Lastly, people always ask, how is this cheaper? Well, it's absolutely cheaper than police. It's not to make a statement that we don't need police. We absolutely do, but we're just we're just a different option, and it's not that much to start us up. So you can see here our startup cost on average is about $37. Our annual cost is about $98. This is for two average police and ACS. It's not the lowest, it's not the highest. We don't use a uniform. At most, we have a jacket or a shirt that has our little logo on it. We do not use body cams. Our equipment is really just our radio and our laptops and cell phones. Our training is a lot less, even though we have a very robust training program. Supervision costs a lot less. Vehicles are less because we're not using the traditional kind of police vehicles, not needed for us. So again, this has been really fantastic. We plan on doing this with our fire and our safety, our different safety teams around the city, just because it's important for people to understand what it costs to start these types of programs up. Just because we want to make sure that our staff, we also need to make sure that employees are taken care of and that they have good morale and that we're getting them the right certificate for the right CEUs and different trainings, and that they get the same kind of love that I think that we sometimes don't do with other public safety departments. We have to make sure that people are taken care of mentally, physically, emotionally. I don't want to go through all of this. We're in the middle of a budget season. We are asking for double our cost, what we have, so that puts us at close to 15.2 million. We want to be 24/7. Our community is asking it of us. We want to have dedicated teams in certain areas, and we want to make sure that we have that ladder of people coming through. So I'm going to stop there. I know I probably over talked, but I do, I'll go back and see if this is the time for questions, or do you want to wait a little bit longer?
Thank you so much, Mariela. We really appreciate it. And so we know there are many of you who have questions. And so now is the time that you can ask your questions. And we have many different ways for you to do so. So if you are on Zoom, please send your questions in the chat to Aviva Carroll-Welber. So send them directly to her, and there will be a time when she will ask them. Now, answer them. Now, in the room, if you would like to write down your question, there were index cards given out at the beginning, and if you would like to write down your question, then raise your hand. If you don't have a card, raise your hand, and someone will give you a card. If you would like to ask the question directly, you are also welcome to do that. Raise your hand. We do ask that you keep your question brief to 30 seconds. We want you to ask a question and not give a long statement. Amen? We're in church. So what we're going to do is, if you would like to ask your question directly, you raise your hand, and Neil will serve you with the mic. But what we're going to have is Daryl Murkison, who's going to raise his hand right here. He has got a timer. And so when we say 30 seconds, we mean 30 seconds, so it's fair for everybody. So as soon as you start talking, he's going to put the timer on. At 20 seconds, he's going to raise his hand and say, all right, 20 seconds, or you might hear the bell. And then at 30 seconds, he'll stand up. Ring the bell and stand up, so that way you know 30 seconds is up, okay? So what we're going to do is, if you have, if you want to, we'll give you, oh, here. Neil's going to give the mic. So raise your hand in the room. If you would like to write your questions down, then you can also, and you're finished, then raise your card, and Gino or Catherine will collect it from you. So we've got multiple ways of asking questions. If you are a Spanish speaker and you want to ask a question, then ask her. Can you say that in Spanish?
Si tienes una pregunta, por favor, pueden utilizar la tarjeta si desean, o también pueden usar el micrófono y decir la pregunta directamente.
And is Sally in the room?
Yeah.
And we've got Sally who is going to translate, if you would like to verbally ask a question.
Si quieres hacer la pregunta, Sally, que está allá atrás, va a interpretar la pregunta, lo va a traducir.
All right, so you heard a great deal of information from some very impressive individuals, and you have plenty of opportunity to learn more. So what are your questions? And I do know some of you, so don't make me put you on the spot. All right, who do we got? Oh, this is a question from someone. Do you want me to read off the cards?
The questions go to John. What happened to Jonathan? Jonathan left. Jonathan was supposed to be the one reading the cards.
First question, where's Jonathan?
Okay, so all right. So what we'll do is we'll go to Aviva,
Okay.
and then we'll collect. We'll give people more time if they want to write their questions, and then we'll do that. And we can go to Aviva if she has questions.
Okay.
Great. Yes, we have many questions. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes? Great. Okay. So one question that was asked is, what is the plan in terms of working with the already existing models that are in Lynn that mimic crisis response? There's a program that already exists. Are they going to help expand it?
Okay, so I think, so we are currently in the process of developing Alert. And so there are people who are working together, and we are in the process of working with the city to develop invite a consultant who is also going to be doing additional research and speaking with other people and figuring out the ways in which we will work together with the various existing organizations, and also figuring out the best way for us to create an independent Alert that is able to provide the need in Lynn as well.
Thank you. Another question from Zoom. Someone asked, are you able to use sirens so you can get to the individual quickly? If not, is that something you are interested in pursuing?
Cindy?
Yes.
We do not use sirens. There are state laws around who can have that. We do not plan on it. We do have lights. They're not the big lights that go on the hoods. They're lights that go on the front bumper and the back bumper. But the reality is that when you have enough folks, you should be able to get to people because they're within those vicinities. So we do place people we're a city of about 800,000 folks, including our county. So it's just really about strategy on where you put people in the parts of town. So we didn't feel that there was a need for sirens.
Thank you. Can I ask another question from Zoom?
Sure, yes.
Great. So another one of the questions was, there were two that were related. I'm going to connect them. Will Alert work along with police and fire? It sounds like they don't want them. I'm confused. And Lynn medics want police for some of these calls. What happens then?
So I think the important part here is, just like it was stated, police to a certain extent will be utilized. However, we don't want them to be the first response. We believe that this independent response team will have the training and sufficiently capable of answering the calls on their own. And they will then determine if police are needed at that call. But the important part is that the response team will be the ones making that determination. That was
Great. And there's one more question that goes nicely with that, and then maybe we'll go back to some from the room. Someone else on Zoom asked to know more details about what training for the team would look like.
It's interesting, but we have to work with the consultants and our partners to determine the right training, the best practices for us. As folks have said, there are different types of training, de-escalation, there's medical training, there's all types of training, but we don't know exactly what will be the best training for the people for them. So that's yet to be determined. Hopefully as we have the consultants on board, we can have that discussion in more detail.
And if I can chime in really quickly as well, I will tell you that that magic training is going to take time. Even though we started with 280 hours of training, and I'll put the link in as well to show all the trainings that we offer and that are mandatory. Even now, we still have a Thursday training from different providers across the city because there's just so much moving all the time, right? The providers change, qualifications change, healthcare systems change, and I think it's really important, at least from a public health perspective, that training doesn't just stop from the beginning, that it's multiple out, and sometimes that has to redevelop. So, again, I think finding what works to get started, but knowing that that's an ongoing, it's going to take time to get to that perfect exact training, and even then, it will still need to be evolved.
Thank you. Happy to pause since I know there are many questions in the room.
Yes, thank you.
All right, now does anyone have some questions to speak up about now that we've heard a little bit more? Hello?
In Albuquerque, is there a specific division for youth? Whether it's like truancy or just youth-related calls?
So we don't have a certain group that goes out to just youth calls. A lot of our responders have backgrounds in working with youth, but we don't necessarily have a team that does that. I will tell you, we are working through, there's a lot of liability issues that come with working with youth, and it's all at different stages, right? 15 is different than 12, 12 is different than 10, 10 is different than 8. And I think it's very, what we're finding is, like, I'll give you a very quick instance. We went to a call for a child that was having suicidal ideations at the school. The counselor called us. So we went out, and while we were there, we were talking to the counselor, we were talking to the principal was there, and before we started even talking to the child, we heard something that was a game changer for us. We heard the child may be abused at home. That there was potential proof that might be happening. That changes our response. At that point, we were not going to interview the child because we did not want, she was already going to have to be interviewed by police in order to then create a child protective service response in which they were mandated to have to provide if a child is claiming that they're being abused at home or there is potential, just thought that might be happening. And we know, right, as a social worker, I'm not going to re-traumatize a child 3 times in a row in order to do that. So what we did is we stood afar. We made sure that we were there for that child in case they needed support. We became advocates instead of the response team. We really worked with the child to make sure that they knew that they weren't in trouble, that they didn't say anything wrong. And at that point, police and our child protective services were able to come in and chime in and work. And it did end up having a lot more legality issues than we wanted to, than we were prepared, nor did we want to, did we have the authorization statewide to be able to do that. So just things that we think about with certain types of cases, we're not gonna rehash. We're not going to take a statement knowing that, or have an interview knowing that there could be potential areas that then could be missing, and we didn't want to be. We're working through some of that, so just as a heads up.
Thank you, Mariela. We have another question?
How do you deal with home calls regarding homeless people? And do you have cases of people who calls are placed on repeatedly? How do they get helped?
We get a lot of our repeat 911 callers for unsheltered individuals, and the reality is that there's not always, but there's definitely a lot of co-occurring issues. So it's rare that we find somebody who's dealing with depression or schizophrenia that isn't also using some sort of substance. And so a lot of times we have to detox to be able to get to that place, and if folks aren't willing to treat the addiction, then it's really difficult to then treat the mental behavioral health condition. So I think we really try to meet people where they're at. We always make sure that if we can take them to detox, we will. And we treat them every day as they're a new person. We will go out, we're mandated, since we are being dispatched from the 911 center, we are mandated to go out. So I don't care if we go out 20,000 times, we are going to go out until that person is ready for the change that they might think is appropriate for them. But this is really about, right, we're not enforcement. That's not what this alternative response is. It's about meeting people where they're at and letting them make the best decisions and choices for them, and just being the support that they need despite whatever choices they make.
All right, we have another question over here.
Yes, I'm just going to translate from my group here. Can an undocumented person be part of the team, or would that be a problem?
So undocumented people can be a part of the team. I think we have worked through ways to be able to get people hired at the city of Albuquerque. As somebody who has ran our Office of Immigrant Refugee Affairs, there's lots of ways to get city undocumented people working at the city, just through different methods. So yes, that is something we have worked on, as well as people who have been formerly incarcerated who would also not pass background checks.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? For Mariela, I want to ask how you were able to get buy-in from the police department, how you were able to become a co-equal branch of response. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think there's multiple answers to that. So one, it's really that this is one of those that really has to be from the top. Our mayor really believed that we should have parity. They wanted to name my position a chief position, which we did not want to use paramilitary language, so we opted not to do that. But the reality is that your administration really has to make that work for you at the top. For at least the first part, right? I mean, I meet with our chief of police and our chief of fire every week. Right now, we're in a state of emergency, and we are treated like responders. So, you know, I'm at the table with them making decisions for what do we need to do, how do we want to address mental behavioral health, while, right, we have fires happening around our city. And so I think there's a big piece that has to be from the top. Now, they can still do it, and we still got a lot of pushback in our first ID division phase. We hadn't even implemented yet, and we had already seen a ton of pushback. And you don't just deal with your police department employees, you deal with your union. Your union will come heavy at you for police. And so that was a big struggle, was to try to explain to them what we were trying to do here. It wasn't until we started, it wasn't until the proof in the pudding happened that they started to see calls coming off, that the fear of we're gonna have to go save you stopped. That the you don't know what you're getting yourself into, that sentiment all stopped. And it was because when we needed to have police, we made the call, right? And it doesn't happen very often. It's not like a very large number. It's like less than 1% of the calls that we've been out to have we actually needed police backup. That says a lot. And so when we did have police, it was like they needed to see what that interaction looked like. And so as soon as that started to happen, then they would go tell somebody. I started getting calls saying, hey, you guys think you might be able to handle this? All of a sudden, they started saying, I know you guys are only supposed to go to these types of calls, but do you think that you can go to this other call? I just don't necessarily know how to write them. That's the truth that this can happen, right? But it does take a lot. It takes, like, my folks were going to police stations. They were making it a point to go visit and talk to them and inform them. We even made special cards just for them so that they knew how to get a hold of us, what numbers to call, how to talk to dispatch and ask for assistance. It takes a lot of work, and it's not that they don't understand, it's that there's fear. Fear leads with a lot of why we do what we do. And there was fear of push, and the fear was leading the pushback that we were getting. Now, you know, we've even had officers saying, well, I don't know why you can't just live in the police department, or firefighters who say, you guys could live in our department, and we're very happy in our own department. So I will say that it's taking time. Same thing with our dispatchers. They're just an extension. Your dispatchers, your 311 call takers, your gatekeepers. Those are your people that we have to really work with to really say, like, this can work. Let me show you. Like, get in the car with us. We took people on ride-alongs. It took a lot of buy-in for us. The community was not the hard part. That was the easy part. We have a lot of faith from our community that this could happen. Your city councilors, get them involved. Explain to them what you're trying to do. We got them in the cars as well. We took them for ride-alongs. They will be your allies when you need money.
Awesome. We do have some more Zoom questions. Do we want to switch back to Zoom, or we want to go to the cards? All right, absolutely.
So I have 3 questions from the room for Mariela. First, how did you build political will? You got into that a little bit just now with the ride-alongs and such. How did you initially get funding? And what kind of training do your responders get, and how much?
Well, again, just like I spoke, we also, I will say, and this is rare, and I shouldn't, we were very fortunate. We did this during a pandemic, and we did this at a time that our city council believed in this model. We used every piece of momentum that we had, and we moved fast. So our city council and our mayor all aligned, right? It's awful to say, but our stars aligned perfectly. So all of our money is general funds. We had $100,000 of an 8.1 budget, 8.1 million budget that was just from the Conference of Mayors grant. So I will say that's how we got this started. A lot of different cities have used ARPA funds, have used CARES money, right, that's still kind of on the mix, and that is still done. I will tell you also from a federal perspective, there is still a lot of people who are now realizing that this is really coming down the lane. The last thing I will say around political will, 988. 988 is coming down the pipeline. I don't know where it's at in your state, but it's mandated to happen from a state level, from the federal government, that there will be a crisis line similar to 911, but it'll be 988. I'm telling you now, there will be a need for responders to go out to those calls, and I'm telling you, 911 is going to be at capacity. We're going to end up having more police presence out in the community, and we need to be able to meet the alternative response that's needed for those mental and behavioral health crisis calls. Second question. And I think I touched on it. Funding was all general funds. Now I will tell you, our stars are not aligned anymore. I have an entire new city council that has come in with this new year, and an entire new arena where I really had to work with city councilors, and to really talk about the benefits for very specific to their part of the city. I think it's really important that we narrow down to what they care about. And so yeah, it's definitely, for us, that's a big piece. And then building that, having your advocates, you guys are all there in that beautiful church. You've got to have that community push. I mean, I will tell you, like, sometimes administrations kind of want to do their own thing, and they'll bulldoze and say, yeah, okay, let's give you that, but then they actually are trying to do something else. It will take community efforts to stop that. It will take you calling city councilors and the mayor's office and saying, that's not what we signed up for, that's not what you said you were going to do. There is a piece of it that the community advocacy is very powerful. You gotta have it that they promise you something, you guys come out in numbers and say, hey, you said this, not this. And the last thing, training. Let me put the actual link in there. I know for those that are in this group, but we offer, our training is about 2 months long, and that includes I'll section it out. We do a ton of mental behavioral health training, and that's just around all different types of major issues that you'll see. All the minor ones, like, and by minor, they're not minor, but by, like, not full, we see a lot of schizophrenia, we see a lot of bipolar, and we talk a lot about addiction. So that's a big chunk of what we about 25 to 30% of training. I would say that, like, another 25 to 30% is just safety. Like, I'm not going to placate, and I'm not going to pretend that there is not instances where we have walked into that we absolutely, like, if we did not have the right safety training, it could have been a lot worse. So there is some safety components that you want to do. We always only send people in pairs, and depending on how big the situation might be, we might call for another group of individuals, because at the end of the day, you want to have somebody having your back, so that you can engage in a very purposeful and mindful way. So I think there's a lot of different training that happens around safety. We also do a ton of medical, because if we're first on scene and it's not exactly what was reported, we need to be able to keep somebody alive for that small, right, for the hopefully until the paramedics get there. So we do a lot of CPR and Narcan that all of that is involved. And then lastly, a big chunk, we have 40 hours of crisis intervention training, which is actually reality-based. And this is like the completion of all of the trainings that you've learned and gone through. Motivational interviewing is part of that, and we test it. So we put people through a 40-hour week in which they have a little bit of additional learning, but then they're being tested on, are you using your skill set that you just learned over the last few weeks? And then we coach on it. So if you're not in a good space, that's not coming through, that we've seen that you're taking what you've learned and you're applying it, we'll delay your process and going out into the field. And then we do about 3 weeks of on-the-job training. So you don't go out in the field without going and shadowing and making sure that you understand how to use, all the different technology that we need to have, radio, editing, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty robust. I could see how we may be adding to it. But you talk about 2 months of training versus a 6-month training, which is a pretty traditional number for police and fire. It's pretty good.
Let us give Mariela a brief thank you so much. I would like you to see everyone standing here in the back. We are so grateful to you for telling and we are so grateful to you for all your help and wisdom and guidance, and are grateful to you because you also said that you are willing to help us out more. So we know that there are those of you who had questions that didn't get them answered. We are grateful to Mariela because she has said that she is willing to come back and to walk with us in this journey. So we are grateful to her. And thanks to you all for asking your questions. At this time, we're just going to talk about next steps. We want to get you out of here by 8 o'clock. So we're going to move quickly, and we invite Isaac Hodes to come and talk about next steps.
Good evening. So we've heard about why it's so urgent that we move forward with an unarmed crisis response program. The stories that people were so brave to share, we know those are just the tip of the iceberg, right? We've all heard the high-profile cases right here in Lynn, as well as around the country, but right here in Lynn, whether it's what happened to Victor White, what happened to Dennis Reynoso, but we know those are the tip of the iceberg of hundreds and thousands of examples of the harm that's done by the status quo, by not having this alternative. So we know it's urgent to bring this unarmed crisis response program into being for the sake of community safety, right? For the sake of better care, for the sake of effectiveness, and in order to take a step forward to preventing escalation and profiling, and to take a step forward in the fight against structural racism. So to make that reality happen, we need a few things. Number one, we need a program design that is true to the ideals that we heard outlined tonight and that have been at the core of our community demands right here in Lynn from the outset, from the time when there were all the mobilizations after the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others. This needs to be independent from the police, not a co-response model, but a truly independent program. This needs... And we know this needs to center de-escalation and care and anti-racism and have staff who are highly trained and ready to respond to community needs. So that's number one. We need that design in keeping with the real spirit of what we've all been fighting for. Number two, We need the program to have the resources it needs to be successful. Number 3, and most important, we need our community, people in this room and around our city, to be engaged and to push and to fight for this program, to make sure we have those key ingredients. This model that we're talking about, it pushes back against decades of policy and centuries of structural racism in this country. And we know changes like this don't happen when we put forward an idea as a community and then hope that our elected officials can carry it home for us, right? Okay, this is the kind of change that needs a movement at its back. So we need everyone in here to think of the spirit and to recapture those moments of mobilization, the anger, the frustration, the hurt, the fear, but also the hope when we were marching together a few summers ago and going back through the history of centuries of struggle in this country and around the world. We need that spirit of the movement to push this forward, right? We know that treating social problems as law enforcement issues, responding with force instead of care, this is deeply, deeply entangled with the new Jim Crow, with the new face of racism. So we need a movement and you all's involvement to bring this home. So for program design, the city is now in the process of hiring an organization to serve as a consultant to guide the planning and implementation strategy for an unarmed crisis response team. And that's progress. But we need everyone to stay active to make sure that the leadership is really from the grassroots. The consultants can bring expertise, capacity, research, expertise, but the people on the ground who know the needs here in Lynn have to lead, and that only happens if we all stay involved and engaged. Number 2, for resources, the city's budget for the new fiscal year is now being worked on. Again, we look to everyone in this room, to people around the city, to all the organizations who are in the Racial Justice Coalition and who are going to come on board to make sure that our elected officials, including the city council, including the mayor, understand this unarmed crisis response program, ALERT, is an urgent priority for us. And it needs to be funded in a way that reflects what's sometimes been called the fierce urgency of now. So for staying engaged, there's 2 pieces. In a few minutes, we'll hear from Adriana about how to connect directly with LRJC and some specific next steps. First, we'll hear from Dr. Spencer Piston, Associate Professor of Political Science at Boston University, about a series of community conversations that are going to be convened right here in Lynn about the Unarmed Crisis Response Team. And again, it's critical everyone here today mobilizes your network and the groups you work with to raise their voices and take an active part in these conversations.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here. As a professor at Boston University, I have tremendous admiration for the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition. It's an honor to speak here. I want to live up to that honor. I also want to note, right, not a member of the LRJC, so if I say something you all don't like, you can blame me and not them. I think this is my read after studying racism and policing and alternatives to policing around the country. My read on this is that, yes, absolutely, active engagement right now is needed. What's also needed is long-term power building. You heard Mariella. This was a long-term effort, and it took a long time to get buy-in, and it's still a push, she's saying, to get funding next time around. What that means is more people. I sense a lot of power in this room, and I'm grateful for it. What I hope these community conversations do is reach out to even more people, some of whom have had experiences similar to those in those rooms. A lot of people with a lot of passion is going to make it harder for them to back out. And I'll tell you more of my read, which is that they want to back out. I've interviewed your chief. He said, no one told us there was a problem. That's his exact words. I know, I've heard it down. And I thought, how could he possibly see? He doesn't seem like a person who has no idea what's going on. How could he say that? Well, he kind of clarified later. He said, we have a lot of other community meetings. And when we work with the actual community members, we find there's a lot of support for the police. And that's when I realized there are a lot of people he does not consider to be actual community members.
Right.
And so I'm glad that Isaac mentioned racism. I think the mayor is terrified of the police. I won't hear the mayor use the term racism. I've met with him multiple times now. I've never heard him say there's any problem with policing. My read of the mayor's office is they want to please everybody. And when they can't, they're going to side with police. Because they believe police are more powerful than you are. But with active engagement now, and with long-term power building, through these series of community conversations we're going to hold, and through much more work. My employer has $3 billion, and as much of that as I can get a hold of, I want to siphon it over here.
Thank you. So, as I said before, in order to get this going, in order to really build the power, in order to ensure that this program is what the community wants, we need your help. Now, we also understand that we need funding. And we need to make sure that we have enough money to create the vision that we are putting forward. Now, there's a possibility that the mayor may not be funding this at the level, at least at the level it was before, $500K. So we need to make sure to call and communicate to our mayor that can't happen. We need you to show your commitment, and we need you to show it by putting dollars down. So in order to do that, we're asking you guys to fill out a commitment card. There's a couple of options here. You're going to fill out what you feel comfortable with. First one is, if you simply want to be updated on progress, you can check that off. If you're committed to contacting the mayor and letting him know how you feel, please check that off. The next one is, we have a meeting coming up next week on the 11th. And at that meeting, we're going to talk about how you all can help move things forward. Check that off if you're committed. We hope everyone does. I will participate in the community conversations. Check that off, please. We will update you. We will make sure you know the dates and times so that you can join us, so that you can have your voice heard in those surveys and any information that is needed to really build out this program. If there's anything else that you need, anything else you're willing to provide, there's the other option as well. Please fill this out, hand it to someone. Neil over there?
I'll take him, yep.
Yeah. Once you're done, or you can put it in the front. That is it.
From Zoom, I just want to let folks know that the online form needs permission, so the permissions can be changed on it so that people can fill it out, please.
Oh,
Is the next meeting on the 11th going to be here at at this time?
It's going to be, okay, thank you for asking that question. The question was, is the meeting on the 11th going to be here at this time? It is going to be on Zoom at 7 o'clock. So we are having another meeting next week, Wednesday, June 11th, a week from today. So now, May 11th, I'm sorry, yes, May 11th, a week from today.
On Zoom.
On Zoom. And so it's important, if you want to show up, that we get your information. The mayor, we heard that, we know the budget is still being worked out, but we know that the mayor is not planning to fund alert at the current level of $500,000. So, well, what this is an opportunity for us to push. The mayor does not know that there are people who care about this. So we have been working, the Lynn Racial Justice Coalition, behind the scenes, really, for the past 2 years. And so he has seen our faces, our 10 faces around here, and I think he thinks that that's really all the people that care about this. But if you believe that Lynn needs an unarmed crisis response team that is adequately funded, we've just heard from Mariela Ruiz Ankel, and her budget is $7 million. Okay, we've asked for $500,000. And $500,000 is not enough to do what we know needs to be done, even to start what needs to be done. And so we need to tell the mayor that if he said that he was serious when he ran as mayor to commit to alert and to have a successful program, that he needs to fund it adequately. He needs to fund it at least at the level of $500,000. And so he needs to hear from us. He needs to hear from us. If you believe that Lynn needs an unarmed crisis response team, if you've heard about what happened in Albuquerque, if you've heard about what the needs are in Lynn, and you believe that that is something that needs to happen, I want you to stand to your feet. Will you stand to your feet? If you're in Zoom, can you put on gallery view? We want to see, look, we got most of the people standing in this room. Let's go on gallery view. If you believe that Lynn needs an unarmed crisis response team, I want you to raise your hand, raise the Zoom hand, do a little celebration, do the heart, everything. I want you to look around and scroll through. We've got 75 folks here in 72 Silsby Street. We've got another 50 folks online. We need an unarmed crisis response team. We need it to be funded. We need the mayor to know. And so on your commitment card, we want you to check off that you will contact the mayor and that you will let him know. Also, we need to regroup, right? We have all of these folks around the room, and we need to plan for what we're going to do to move things forward. And so I want, as we say, remain standing, we're in church. And in church, we like to close with a song. And so because we are in church, we're going to close with a song. I want you all to look at your agendas. And on the back of your agenda, we're going to sing a song. And this is from the South African anti-apartheid movement. And it was a song that was sung to encourage people. Now here we are standing all across this room and in unity all across Zoom. And we are here for one another. We are a community. We are going to care for one another, and we are not alone. We are not the 10 people that the mayor thinks that we are. We are thousands. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sing and we're going to encourage one another. And so this is a common call and response song. We're going to get our folks. We got some microphones here. Here we're going to grab we got the microphones here. Okay.